Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another super smashing, marvelous, wonderful, glorious episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at Jonny Lipsham Studios in the southeast of Edinburgh in Scotland, the capital of the world, and everything in it. So I hope everybody has had a good week. Been a good week for me. It's been quite a chilled out one in terms of family because my wife has been on holiday time, so she's been at home, and it's been really, really nice. So yeah, it's been really great, and we've had fantastic weather. So the kids have been able to get out in the garden. We've had barbecues for dinner, kind of most evenings actually, in our own garden, which has been awesome. So that's the story of my week. And about to head into another fantastic week doing what I do for Presonus, which is great. I love my job. I love the company, and I just love all the folks that I work with. They're awesome. So anyway, I hope everyone's had a good week. And as I said in the chat there, if you've not seen it, tonight's subject, I know I don't normally do a subject on a Sunday night, but I keep on asking you guys to send me emails suggesting a subject for a show. Well, Kevin from Kevin's Guitar Stories has done just that. We've also got a pinned post at the top of the chat from Just Bob, which is a question that I'm going to kick off with after we've kind of done the subject bit. So Kevin actually wrote me an email, and he asked a really great question, which was to do with improvisation. And he was talking about when he is playing over chord changes in the key of G major, how is it that using the E minor scale works really well and sounds great? Why is that? Well, the short answer is that it's because E minor is the relative minor of G major. So there are common tones to both G major and E minor. There are a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, for the most part, there are common tones. And you talked about using Dorian mode, E Dorian mode in, over chord changes in the key of G, and why it works so well. So if you've got a piece of music that features fairly straight ahead chords in the key of G major, then the G major scale is going to work. The G pentatonic scale is going to work. But guess what? The G pentatonic scale also has lots of common tones with the E minor pentatonic scale as well. So that's why those are going to work. And you can play using just the G major scale and the E minor pentatonic and a little smattering of E blues scale in a set of chord changes that are in G major, and you don't even have to think about the chord changes when you're improvising. Chord changes will help because they will give you extra notes that you can use, and then you can approach those notes chromatically or diatonically, either as passing notes, to just add a little bit of extra spice to and a little bit of extra dissonance to your improvising. So it works really, really well, and Kevin basically wants to know why. And the short answer is because it is a relative to G major. So if you are, let's say you are working on a piece in B flat, then G minor pentatonic scale and G Dorian mode is going to work mostly in a B flat major piece. You would find that the sixth degree of the Dorian scale doesn't always work. It will sound a little bit wonky over some chords. Now you can use that as a passing tone if you want, and the reason being is because in G Dorian, which is it's basically the B flat major scale starting on G in this case, the thing that it has is it has this E natural, which is not part of the B flat major key, because you have a B flat and E flat. Because if we take the major scale, so that E natural doesn't belong. So you have to use that particular note of the G Dorian scale. If you're going to use it in a B flat major context, you're going to have to use it carefully, because if you play an E flat chord, it kind of works, and it'll sound nice if you resolve it up to the ninth. So it kind of acts as a flat 9 resolving up to the 9. Or if you go down, or so in that context it would work really well. So related scales to the key that you are in will work. So if you're using the relative minor, it will work, because they're related. Now, as I said, if you're going to use the Dorian mode from the relative minor, you've got to be careful with the 6th degree of that scale, because it won't always fit. But quite often it does. So I do have a piece of music set up in Studio One, by which I can show you how to do this in G major and why it sounds great, and you don't have to think, which is really important when you're improvising, because you want to focus on shaping your melodic lines. You don't want to have to think about a specific chord as it comes up. So let's give you this, and I forgot to go over to Studio One. There we go. So let's just work around this little 8-bar loop, and I'm just gonna kind of improvise on the piano, using the E blues scale and a little bit of the E minor scale, and you'll see how it fits and how it doesn't fit in certain places. So you'll notice there that sometimes if I'm using the C sharp from the E minor scale, the C sharp sometimes doesn't fit, especially when we're on the C major chord. You know, if I play, kind of doesn't really fit, but you can make it fit like I did a couple of times there as a passing tone. Leading to either to resolve up to a consonant tone like the D, or going down will also work. So if you do accidentally hit that 6th degree of the scale, you're okay. You can make it work by either using it as an approach note to the half step above or the half step below. It'll work. Now, notice there that I did use a little bit of blues scale. So if I just play a little bit more, but this time just use the blues scale, you'll see how this works really nicely as well. So it works really, really nicely because, you know, that acts as kind of like the blue third in the key of G, as much as when you're using the E blues scale, you know, is actually the flat 5. But when you're using it in G major, it becomes the blue third. So it actually works really quite nicely. So, Kevin, I hope that answers your question. It was a really good one, and I thought I could kind of set it up with just kind of demonstrating a little bit of how those scales can interact really nicely with each other. You can also use arpeggios and chord tones. I did a little bit of that. You know, when we went to the D7, you know, I spelled out pretty much a C major 7. And then down to a B minor. And then you can spell out an A minor A minor 7 as well. And that would make for a nice little way to resolve all of that D7 tension up to G major again. So that works pretty good. So Kevin, there you go. That answers that question for you. So I hope that helps and gives you some improvisational ideas, because, you know, that's really what using those kind of related scales is all about. It's improvisation. And, you know, being able to not think about chord changes quite so much. So I hope that helps. But one thing I forgot to do right at the start of the show, which is something I always do, but I kind of forgot, and that is to see who was first in the door, and I'm not really sure who it is because all the timestamps are a bit backwards. I don't know why. But anyway, let's just say who's here. So Keith is here, Just Bob is here, which is awesome, and we'll get to his question in a minute. John Lake is here, Alps Media, my awesome sponsor, is here. Kevin, whose question was brilliant, is here as well. Billy Morgan is here. Carl Juziak is here, which is great. Who else is here? Ken Moss is here. Excellent. And John Hawk is here. Simon Carpenter is here. Hello, Simon. Hope you're doing well, buddy. Let's see. Tony Stringer is here. I've not seen him for a wee while, so welcome back, Tony. And Dwayne is here. Let's see. Don Oliver is here. Andrew Lamb is here. He says good morning. And Marcos over in Brazil is here. Burlap Studio is here. Burlap, I've not seen you for a wee while, so it's nice to have you back amongst us, mate. Welcome back. Let's see who else is in the house. Bops is here, which is cool. I'm glad he's here. That's why A minor works well over C. Exactly, for exactly the same reason, because it's the relative minor of your keys. So you can work that way, perfectly justifiably. Waveform Lab is here as well. He says, good discussion. Well, I'm glad that you are appreciating it. It was a great emailed question and a suggestion for a topic for the show. So thank you very much, Kevin, for that suggestion. Now, if you want to do the same as what Kevin has done, and you want to suggest a subject that we can cover and I can do demonstrations with, then go to the website underneath my finger there, johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk. Go there at the bottom, and you'll have to scroll to the bottom of the page. And when you get to the bottom page, there is a contact form you can fill out there, and you can fill in your question and the suggestion for the subject for the show. And I would like to build up a nice little list of subjects that are chosen by you guys, stuff that you are into, stuff that you would like me to kind of explore. Then we can definitely start featuring some of these in our shows. So I would love it if you guys would do that. So go ahead and do that at the end of the show. If you you can answer You can ask a question in the chat just now. That is perfect. That is great. But if you've got a suggestion for a subject, then you can email me. And if you think of a question late after at the end of the show or after the show, then drop me an email and I will get your question answered in the next show. So please go ahead and do that, guys. Lorenz is here, which is awesome. Glad he's here. Lorenz has been around for a good wee while, so I'm glad he's here. All right, so let's get to Bob's question. I have to scroll back up to go find it. He says, I hope I'm asking correctly. How do you write or read complex time signatures that can be mistaken or confused for compound triplet meter time? Is there notation for each? Now, I'm not 100% clear on what it is you're asking. However, I'm going to attempt this one. There are some time signatures, compound time signatures, if you're not sure what compound and simple time is. Simple time is something like 3/4 or 4/4 or 2/4 or 5/4. Although 5/4 is kind of determined as an odd time signature, it's still simple time. Why? Because the quarter note is divided into 2 beats, 2 eighth notes. Whereas in compound time, it's not. It's a triplet kind of meter. So example of those would be 6/8, 9/8, 3/8, 12/8. Those are all compound time because they are groups of 3. So in 6/8, you'd have 2 groups of 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And in 9/8, you'd have 3 groups of 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And, 3/8 is obviously going to be 1 group of 3. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So those are triplet-based meters. They are referred to in music theory as compound time. So 9/8 can be a simple time as well as compound time. It's one of those time signatures where you can actually split it up into maybe a couple of groups of 2 and then a group of 3. So you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hang on, let me think about this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That would be a group of 5. So you could do it. You could count it as two groups of 2 and then a group of 5, or you could break it up in other ways. So you could go because you want the 7, 8, 9. So you could go 1 to 6 as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And here's the interesting thing about that is that you will find music from the Balkans and places like that in Eastern or Near Eastern Europe where compound times are often measured like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's definitely an odd time. So if we went back with the 9, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and so you would, I've worked with some musicians that are from places like Romania and places like that, and in Romania and Croatia and places like that, sometimes they will count it as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and in fact, Dave Brubeck's Unsquared Dance features that rhythm. 2, 3, 1, 2. So that's an example of where a compound time, or what would normally be referred to as a compound time, 9, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, can be counted as an odd simple time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, one hander. 1, 2, 3, one hander. So that's that with compound times that could be also read as a simple time with kind of like a triplet on the end. There's lots of other variations of that. There's some weird ones out there. You know, there's like 15/8 and there's, you know, 21/8 and other time signatures like that. Again, that you find in Eastern European music quite a bit. And so the way I was taught by one of my drum teachers, he had just come back from a tour of the Balkan states. This is way back in 1992. He'd just come back from the Balkan states on a tour, and he said, "I've got to show you these rhythms, and they're weird, but here's how you count them." And so he taught me a really simple way to count the duplets and triplets. And one of those was to give each duplet and the triplet sound a different word that you can associate with it. So he said, triangle has 3 syllables. So that would work perfectly for the triplet parts, the compound elements of these complex time signatures. So I went with that. And then he said, okay, so duplets, he said what he was taught by these musicians in the Crimea, I think it was. He said they taught him that duplets can be counted as housey. So you take house, the word house, and then you accent the E, so housey. So you turn a 1-syllable word house into a 2-syllable word housey, and that gives you a duplet kind of sound. So he would go housey, 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 triangle, housey, 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 triangle, and that's how you do the 9/8. And then, you know, if you want to do, 11/8, you would add another house. So you'd have 4 houses. Housey, 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 triangle, housey, 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 triangle, housey, 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 triangle. And so that got me into thinking about unusual time signatures, complex time signatures in a really simple way, which meant that when I was playing with some of these musicians many, many years later, I could, you know, draw back on those teachings that I received in the early 1990s. And it meant that, you know, I could go and play these really complex pieces without really thinking about, you know, the having to count every beat. And certainly not at the tempos they do them, because, you know, they'll do 9/8 really, really fast, you know, and so on. And I think there's a couple of records by Rush that feature that kind of duplet followed by triplet kind of concept. I think Neil Peart may well have discovered the same kind of thing and started to apply them to some of the songs that he wrote for Rush. So there's a few out there that do that kind of thing. So I hope that helps very much, Bob, because that's a really great question. You're answering perfectly. I was reading up on this and got lost. Your counting off is a great explanation. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have any examples like I could do for Kevin of those kind of things. I maybe need to work a few, create a few little examples of things in 9/8, 11/8, 15/8, and that kind of thing. Captain of Harp by Band Double. Oh, really? Yeah, I don't even know who they are. Sorry about that. Let's see, what else do we have? Questions wise. Compound time confuses me. Compound butter. Yeah, compound time is basically triplets rather than duplets. Think of it that way. Duplets, simple. Triplets, compound, because it's an extra note onto the end of a duplet. Duplet being 2 notes, triplet being 3. So 5/8 is a perfect example of a combination of duplets and triplets. Duplet and a triplet. So going back to my house and triangle kind of analogy, it would be housey triangle, housey triangle, housey triangle, housey triangle. and you can create all sorts of weird and wonderful time signatures just using a mixture of different combinations of duplets and triplets, and you can have loads of fun with it. Sometimes you can take a bar of 4/4, so eighth notes, and break them up into different groups of 2s and 3s, and you can make something that doesn't feel or sound like it's in 4/4, but it really is because of where you've just placed the emphasis of the beats. So that's another fun little thing you can do. 3 balls and 2 strikes. Yeah, that works. You know, the 3 balls in baseball would be your compound, and 2 strikes. Yeah, that would work. Except I think in baseball you have 3 balls and 3 strikes, if memory serves. It's been a while since I've actually played baseball. I used to play baseball when I was a college student. When I was a college student, I played cricket on Saturdays, and then I played baseball on Sundays. There was a Sunday league that I was involved in. So yeah, I played both sports. Secret Squirrel is here. And he says, would you be so kind as to demonstrate detecting percussion from a multi-track project? Unfortunately, I don't have an example of that. Slice a vocal track which was recorded at improper tempo and place slices properly. Yeah, that would be something that I would have to spend some considerable time setting up. So, please email me. Go to the website down there. Fill out the contact form with that specific question, and I will set up some examples, and we'll do that in the next show. Okay? So send me an email with that specific question, and I'll set something up so that we can take a look at that. It's, to be honest, it's not something I do particularly regularly. Transient detection and slicing vocal tracks and that kind of stuff. Because to be honest, most of the stuff that I mix has been recorded to a click track. In fact, I would say a good 98, maybe 99% of projects that I work on as a mix engineer has all been recorded to a click track. So there really is, it's, you know, slicing and dicing is incredibly easy when everything's done to a click track because everything just lines up to the grid. So, but for sure, please email me that question and we'll take care of that. Okay, I'm just going through and reviewing a couple of things here. Okay, all right. Thank you to my moderators for all the incredible hard work that you guys do. All right, Don Oliver says, can you explain 9, 11, and 13th chords like C9 and so on? Yes, I can certainly do that. So, for the most part, we think of music in terms of an octave. So C to C is an octave. However, for the most part, when we're dealing with popular music, we're dealing with either major sevenths, minor sevenths, dominant sevenths, or half diminished sevenths. And we'll get on to half diminished sevenths another time because they are a whole nother kind of level of complexity. So let's deal with major sevenths and we'll deal with dominant sevenths to start with. All right, so if I take C major 7, which is basically you just play a note, miss a note, play a note, miss a note, play a note, miss a note, play a note, and we get C, E, G, B. Now, we can extend beyond the octave. So what comes next after 8? 9. There's my 1, 3, 5, 7. There's 9 right there, which is D. Now, I can keep going. So if I keep going in this odd kind of numbers pattern, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, then the next one's going to be 11. But that's going to sound weird. It's not really going to fit that F. And the reason being is because you've got that interval there, which is a horrible, horrible clash. We want to avoid that. So what are we going to need to do? Well, if we flatten the third, that makes it into a minor chord with a major 7th on top. don't want to go there just yet. So I'm not going to do adjust the E. I will adjust the F. So, and I'm going to raise it by a semitone or a half step. And so what we have now is C major 7, the 9 on top, and the sharp 11 on top. And I can keep going. So the next interval on top would be the 13th, which would be the A. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, sharp 11, 13. Now what do we notice immediately about the 9, the sharp 11, and 13? It's a D major triad. So let's bring that down an octave. So C major 7, D major triad on top. And that gives you C major, effectively C major 13, sharp 11. Now the cool thing is, as we know, because we've just sharpened the 11th, you can sharpen or flatten any of these extended intervals. So the 9th, the 11th, which we've just raised, or the 13th. You can raise it, you can flat it. Okay? And these really work if we turn this major 7 chord into a dominant 7 chord. So let's flat that 7. Now we've got a dominant 7 chord. Bring the mic over a bit closer. Let's put the 9 on top of there. And the sharp 11. And then the 13. Sounds pretty cool. But it also sounds really rather kind of busy. There's a lot going on there. Which is why when you're playing those chords, you pretty much don't play all of the notes. So, what are the most important notes in a chord? The root, so that we know what chord it is. The third, so we know what type of chord it is. And the 7th. Those are the 3 essential chord tones in any chord. So, let's take that root, the 3rd, and the 7th, and just put them in a different order here. And then let's put the 9, sharp 11, and 13 back on top. Now it's a bit less dense now that we've taken the 5th out. Our bass player can play down low here. So I've taken the root out from the chord. So we're left with the 3rd, the 7th, the 9, the sharp 11, and the 13. And our bass player is going to play that note down there. And now you've got something that sounds quite dissonant, because you've got the 13 and the sharp 11 there, which are, you know, the 13 is clashing against the 7th, and then you've got the 9, which is clashing against the 3rd. So you've got plenty of dissonance going on there. But when you start to spread things out a bit, that dissonance doesn't feel quite so strong. So if I take those, the little D major triad on the top, and move it about a bit, now it doesn't sound so bad. Or and now you're getting into the realms of kind of fairly complex jazz harmony. Okay, so what can we do with minor chords? Now the cool thing is here, because we've flatted the 3rd to a minor 3rd, we can keep the 11 as just a regular 11. And we can keep the A as well. So now we have a D minor triad on top of our chord. Same again, take the 5 out, we don't need it. And then let's reorganize it a little bit, make it a bit more interesting sounding. So let's move the 3rd up an octave. So when those notes are all kind of close up together, that's what we call close voicing. But you can spread them all out so that the tension is not quite so strong, like this. So if I take, keep our bass player playing the root, and then if I take the 7 here, and the 3rd, now it's a bit more spread out, doesn't sound so bad, right? Doesn't quite sound quite so loaded with tension. So that is how 9s, 11s, and 13s and all of that kind of stuff works with major 7s, dominant 7s, and minor 7 chords. It's a massive harmonic world to explore, but I recommend that everybody, you know, kind of has a little explore of that kind of harmony. And at first, you know, if it's, you know, sounds that you're not really that familiar with your ear, it's not sounds that you've heard much, then they're going to sound odd. They're going to sound wonky. They're going to sound maybe a little harsh. But eventually your ear will become accustomed to them and you'll start to make sense of how they work and how they can be made to work in different styles of music. So, you know, those kind of chords and those kind of sounds are not just strictly jazz chords. You can use them in any style of music. I mean, you know, there are bands like The Police, for example, who everyone would regard as kind of a bit of a kind of ska, rock, punk band of the 70s and 80s. Andy Summers, the one of the guitar players, I think, at that in the early days of The Police, was fond of playing some of these odd chords, these odd sounding chords. And of course, Sting himself has a background in jazz anyway, being an upright bass player, playing with big bands in Newcastle. So, you know, and then there's Stuart Copeland, who has a background in orchestral percussion, as well as drumline. He played a lot of drumline when he was a youth, which is why you see Stuart Copeland playing traditional grip as a drummer. So, there we go. That kind of harmony is not restricted to jazz music at all. All right. Thank you for extending the invitation to email that you set up a project based upon the request. Please note the email is written, sent, and should currently await you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's go back up a bit and see if there are any other questions. Sonic Tsunami says, are there other scales or keys that harmonize like the major relative minor? There are some. Some modes and some scales will work better than others. For example, on a C major scale or a C major chord, whoops, just nearly destroyed my desk. Taking a C major scale, C major chord rather. This kind of Lydian scale will work very nicely, which is where it's called Lydian because you've got the raised fourth degree of the scale. So you've got F sharp instead of F natural. Something I use actually pretty regularly, and there are loads and loads of others. Can you show some practical uses of diminished scales? Diminished scales. Yes! Diminished scales, like the diminished whole tone scale, for example, work great on dominant chords, dominant 7 chords. I'll show you an example of that. So, dominant 7 in the key of C is going to be G7. There's my G7 chord. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a scale out of the A flat melodic minor scale. So it's, you know, but we're going to start it on G. So it's the A flat melodic minor. But we're going to start it on G. And it has this nice kind of exotic flavor to it, you know. Also works over D flat 7 for the same reason. Also be resolving down to C major. So, you know, if I was to do that in like a 2-5-1, D minor using D Dorian, and then G7, and then I'll use that A flat melodic minor. So and there's my Lydian scale. So little bit of a blues scale thrown in there. So Lydian, diminished scale, diminished whole tone scale, those work great on dominant chords, particularly well. Good question though. Just Bob says 3 strikes, 4 balls, and unlimited foul balls. Yep, absolutely. Are your posts showing up here, says Waveform Laboratory? Yes, they are, because I just answered your question. Let's see. What else do we have? Can you run a slash on the bottom? Yes. Are you referring to chords? Oh, so for example, like G over C. Yeah, so... example, or D over E flat, which is a chord I like the sound of, you know. D flat over F, G flat, E flat over G, A flat, sharp 11, F over A, C over B flat, G over B, G over C, A over C sharp, so yeah, that's what a slash, kind of what we call slash chords, basically means chord on top, different bass note underneath. So G triad, C bass, or C triad, B flat bass. Kind of sounds nice actually. So, you know, those would work in a song, I'm pretty sure. Let's see what else we got. Got a lot of deleted posts here. But that's okay. Let's see, what else do we have? Yeah, okay. Not a problem. All right. Let's see what else. What other questions do we have? Have I missed anything? Okay. Luke Roberts actually did have a question here. He says, "What is song sequencing?" And that's what I think we talked about that the last show, and I think we covered it in it was either Songwriting Simplified or the last Sunday show. But to review, song sequencing is the order of the songs on a record. So, and that's usually done in the mastering phase. It's actually, a pretty important part of making your record work, making sure that the songs are in the correct order. Now, what is the correct order? Correct order is, whatever feels right for the selection of songs. Now, if you have a concept album, like the ones we've talked about before, where you are telling a story over the course of several songs, like Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, for example. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon is another example. You've got to get those songs in the correct order to tell the story in the correct order. No point in having the end of the story as your opening song, because you've just completely destroyed the whole of the rest of your record and nobody will ever listen to it. So you don't want to do that. So getting your songs in the right order is important. But if your songs are not related to each other, it's not a concept album, maybe your songs are collected together by mood. So maybe you have a dark album and this is just a collection of your kind of saddest, darkest material. Then you want to get these in kind of shades of darkness order, perhaps. Or maybe you do a ballads record. Friends of mine have done that. I've played on a few records where it's just a collection of ballads. Michael Brecker, I think in the late 1990s, released a ballads record. James Taylor has done a ballads record, which I really like, actually. So that's all sequencing is. It's just putting songs in an order. Quite often on a record, you might start with an up-tempo, bright-sounding major kind of key kind of song to start with, and then you'll maybe go a little bit darker. You'll maybe slow the tempo down for the next song. Maybe the next one after that is a little bit in the middle tempo-wise. Maybe it's in a different key. Maybe it has a different mood to it. So that's what sequencing is. It's just getting the songs in an order where they kind of make sense together, either tonally, or they are related by key, or they are related by tempo. You've got a slow, you've got a fast, slow, medium tempo, maybe a blues, maybe an up-tempo song again, and then maybe something, extended compositionally as your final song on the record. So that's all song sequencing is. It's not really terribly complicated. You can make it more complicated if you really want to. So yeah, that would be that really. You guys are having fun at somebody else's expense, which isn't always necessarily the greatest thing to be doing. Let's see. Anything else? Any other questions? Can you explain the true meaning of a Brahms? No. I can't. Why do songs have a beginning and an end? Because you got to start someplace and you got to end someplace. Otherwise, you'll be playing music and you just won't stop and it will cease to make any sense. That's why sentences start and then they stop. Because if you just say words in a long string without ever stopping, A, you'll run out of breath. You won't find a point to breathe in. And secondly, it will stop making sense after a certain amount of time because everything is just all in one sentence and doesn't have any breaks, doesn't have any pauses, doesn't have any reason to stop, doesn't have any, it's all in one subject, it doesn't change, and it just gets confusing. Like that sentence. So, that's what I think of that. Ken Moss makes mention of a piece by John Cage where the sheet music is written in a circle. So it was up to the musicians to decide where to start and when to end. Yes, I have played that piece. It's actually really fun because although there are compositional elements, because there's like a melody, there's a set of chord changes, and because it's written in a circle, you can decide where you want to start and where you want to end. And so there is an element of I guess, chance, because you may have different melodic phrases, different notes against completely random chords, and they're gonna kind of happen together in a kind of random chance fashion. If you have like 5 performers and one circle of, I don't know, 8 measures, and each one of the performers can start anywhere they want. So somebody will start at the end, somebody will start at the 5th measure, but you can also go forward or you can go backwards in that circle. So somebody will be going forward, somebody will be going backwards, somebody will be starting at 1 and going all the way round. And then the idea is you keep going round the circle, but starting at those different points. And if you've decided you're starting at measure 5 and you're going to go backwards, you keep going until you got back to where you started, and then you start again. And so you keep going that way. And there's, an element of kind of chance happenings of a melody here, chords here, different part of a melody here, different part of the chord changes here. And so if you design it well so that you know that all of the notes of the melody and all of the chord changes are going to go together, they're going to make sense, they're going to sound good together. So maybe you base everything out of a mode or something, then you could create something really, really interesting that when you perform it can sound really unique, because those chance events are going to happen that you can't predict. Although you probably could, if you did all the maths, you could probably work out where all the encounters with certain phrases and certain chords are going to happen. But otherwise, it's a really interesting idea, and I think everybody should give it a shot. Everybody should give that compositional method a try out. Stupid question. I like to write songs without choruses. Is that a common practice, or is it kind of unusual? No, you will find that there are folk songs that have no chorus. You will find that there are hymns that have no chorus. They are just what we would call strophic verses, i.e. the same set of music for each verse, so the same melody, same chord changes. But but the difference is that the lyrics change for each verse. And some hymns can have as many as 6 or 7 verses, and some of the verses can be really, really, really weird. And then so you have to provide variation, otherwise it will get a little boring for your listener. And that's not because your music is boring, it's not because your melody is boring, and it's not because your lyrics are boring. But if you're hearing the same thing over and over again, the listener can disengage and they will stop actually listening to your lyrics. So for you, if you're setting yourself the limitation of not having a chorus or not having a bridge or any other kind of new material, then the secret sauce for you is going to be in your arrangement. So counter melodies, obligatos, things like that are going to help you out immensely in keeping your listener engaged. Even if your song only has 4 verses, you've got to keep your listener engaged in the music. So, as I said, obligatos. What's an obligato? An obligato is a melody that accompanies the main melody. So you have a main melody sung by your vocalist, and then maybe have a fiddle or a saxophone that is playing an obligato, which is a melody that kind of goes with the main melody at the same time, doesn't get in the way of it, it just accompanies it. And then there's counter melodies, which is a little bit different. So an obligato would you'd maybe have like a bit of a call and response thing going on. So you'd have the sung line, and then the obligato would then kind of have the response line. Counter melody is where you might have more than one melody happening at the same time, so a little bit different. So those kind of things are going to be the secret sauce for you if you're going to only have verses in your songs. And it's not unusual. There's lots of English and Scottish and Irish and some, pre-Civil War American folk songs that have just verses and no choruses. And, they're all, if you were to, distill it down, it all goes back to maybe the late 12th, early 13th century madrigals. And actually, madrigals were written to tell stories about people who did daring things, or to tell to tell stories about the king, or to an interesting way to engage the public in something that the king has done or is about to do, or you want to tell a joke about the king. Got to be careful about how you do that because it could cost you your head. But madrigals quite often were stories, narrative tales that did not have a chorus. So not unusual, and there is definitely precedent for it. Everybody wants to rule the world. No chorus, just ends each verse with that single line. Well, that single line, you're right. It's not a chorus, but it is a hook line. So you can certainly do that, and there are plenty of other songs that do that as well. Counterpoint. Counterpoint is very complicated. Counterpoint is multiple melodies that weave in and out of each other at the same time. There are different types of counterpoint. Probably the most famous of all contrapuntal music would be the music written by Johann Sebastian Bach. And the style prevalent of contrapuntal music would be called fugue, which is where you have a thematic idea that gets tossed between the different instruments in your ensemble. Or if it's for organ, like the 48 Preludes and Fugues was written for organ, then it's between the manuals of the organ and the feet, the pedals of the organ. So the melody gets, this thematic idea gets tossed between the lower, the middle, and the upper parts of the keyboard manuals, as well as the pedals, the bass pedals. And they all kind of happen at the same time. And when one particular part, either the middle or the upper or the lower parts, have kind of run their course, they've kind of stated the melody, then they have what they call a free roll, which is where they are accompanying the melody as it makes its way through the other parts. It's really cool, and it's a very complicated way to write music, but it was very, very popular in the Baroque period. So that would be a great example of counterpoint. Just Bob says, I never thought about hymns. Interesting. Yeah, I put a bridge between verses and sometimes change the verse up slightly so each one is different. Yeah, that's going to be your way of doing it. Kyle talks about Tears for Fears. Everybody wants to rule the world. Yeah, it's a great song. And I saw them perform just recently because they took part in the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. And their performance was really, really good. And yes, they do have a new record out, and it actually sounds really, really good. I've really liked the kind of music that they make. It's complex, yet simple. There's lots of interesting elements in it. So, let's see. how many people do we have watching right now? We are still under 24. We have so far peaked at 23. And I've often talked about, wouldn't it be nice if we could get over 30 people here? And we've got close a couple of times. And I think the record is 32. So we've kind of popped over that 30 threshold. But it would be nice if that would be a regular value. So if you know people for whom you think this show would be valuable, send them an invite. Tell them about the show. If you have not subscribed to my channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button as the notification bell as well, and select all notifications, because I have a whole bunch of stuff coming up that I can't talk about right now, because I'm going to drop it all fairly soon, and it's going to be pretty epic, and it's going to be pretty much a surprise as well. So I am working very hard on this bunch of videos. They're all related to each other. It's going to blow your socks off. It's going to blow your minds, what I've got coming up. So that's all I'm going to say about it, really. To be honest, I don't want to spoil the surprise. It'd be no fun. So I'm not going to give anything away. Yes, Mike, go ahead and put the link in. Go ahead and do that. That would be cool. But there we go. We have reached the end of the show. Some really great questions there from a good number of contributors here, but especially from Kevin with the kind of show opener, and Just Bob's pinned post, which is a great question to kick us all off with. But other than that, you guys have contributed some really great questions, and I appreciate and value you a lot. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for hanging out on yet another Sunday Night Live. I think we are approaching show number 200. I think next week, if I've done my math correctly, Kyle may well be able to help me out with the math here, but unless I'm very much mistaken, my Sunday Night Live playlist is about to hit show number 200. So yeah, that's going to be very, very cool. So with all that said, thanks a lot, guys. Have a great week, and I'll see you on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified over on the Home Studio Trainer channel, unless you get notified otherwise by either me or Jonny or Louis, our fantastic Alps Media LLC sponsor. And that'll be 6 p.m. Central on Wednesday for all your songwriting and arranging and all of that kind of stuff, questions. Okay, folks, I will see you all then. Take care. Good night.